You grew dahlias last summer and they were spectacular. Dinner plate blooms the size of your face, colors you couldn't believe came out of your own garden. You were already planning where to put more of them next year. And then winter came. And now there's nothing. The tubers rotted in the ground. Or you dug them up, stored them carefully, and pulled out a shriveled, moldy mess in spring. Either way, the result is the same. You're starting over from scratch, spending money on new tubers, wondering why everyone else seems to get these plants to come back year after year while yours keep dying the moment the season ends. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from and what season you're in. I read every single one, and seeing dahlia growers from Texas and the UK and New Zealand all dealing with the same plant at the same time never gets old. Here is what nobody tells you when you buy that first dahlia tuber in spring. Dahlias are not difficult to grow. They are not difficult to keep. But they are brutally unforgiving of 5 specific mistakes, and most people are making at least 3 of them without knowing it. Stay with me through secret number 4. That one explains why dahlias that looked completely dead in spring come roaring back if you know what you're actually looking at. And it's the secret that separates people who give up on this plant every October from people who grow the same tubers for 20 years. Number 1. Plant the tuber horizontally, not like every other bulb you've ever planted. The assumption almost every first-time dahlia grower makes is that a tuber goes in the ground the same way a tulip or daffodil bulb does, pointed end down, upright, covered with soil. It's a reasonable assumption. It's wrong, and it quietly causes more failed dahlia starts than almost any other mistake. Here is the biology. A dahlia tuber doesn't have a single growing point at the top the way a tulip bulb does. It has eyes, small growth nodes, located at the neck of the tuber, right where it connects to the main stem of the parent plant. Those eyes are the only place new shoots can emerge. If you plant the tuber vertically with the neck pointing down, those eyes are buried at the wrong depth, the shoot has to travel in the wrong direction to reach the surface, and the tuber frequently rots before it gets there. The correct method: lay the tuber on its side horizontally, with the neck, the narrow end where it connected to last year's stem, pointing toward a stake or support marker. Cover it with 3 to 4 inches of soil, no more. The eye sits at roughly soil level this way, the shoot emerges directly upward, and the tuber body is protected at the right depth. One specific measurement that matters more than most guides admit: soil temperature. Dahlia tubers planted in cold soil below 60 degrees Fahrenheit sit dormant and rot. Don't plant based on the calendar date. Plant when your soil has genuinely warmed. Stick a thermometer 6 inches down and wait for a consistent 60 degrees. In cold climates that might be late May or even early June regardless of what the packet says. For container growing, and dahlias actually perform extremely well in large containers. Use a pot at least 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide for standard varieties, 18 inches for dinner plate types. The horizontal planting method applies exactly the same way. The advantage of containers is you can start them indoors 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date, which gives you significantly earlier blooms and sidesteps the cold soil problem entirely. Number 2. Don't water the tuber until you see growth, not even once. This is the mistake that kills more dahlias before they ever bloom than anything else on this list, and it comes entirely from good intentions. You plant the tuber. The soil looks dry. Your instinct as a gardener is to water it in. That's what you do with everything else you plant. With dahlias, that instinct is actively working against you. Here is the mechanism. A dahlia tuber sitting in cold, damp soil with no active shoot growth has no way to use water. It can't photosynthesize, it can't transpire, it can't move moisture through its system. The water just sits in the soil around the tuber, and sitting water in cool soil is the precise environment that triggers the fungal rot that destroys tubers before they ever wake up. The tuber essentially drowns before it has a chance to grow. The correct approach: plant the tuber into slightly moist soil, not wet, not dry, just barely damp, and then do not water again until you see the first shoots breaking the soil surface. That emergence tells you the tuber is actively growing and can now use water. From that point, water deeply and consistently. But before that point, leave it alone entirely. The hardest part of this secret is psychological. You will look at that dry soil for 2 to 4 weeks and every instinct will tell you the tuber needs water. It doesn't. Resist. The gardeners who can't resist this urge lose their tubers to rot every single year and blame the plant instead of the watering can. In genuinely hot, dry climates, Southern California, Arizona, Texas in summer, the rule relaxes slightly. If your soil is bone dry and temperatures are consistently above 80 degrees, a single light watering 2 weeks after planting is acceptable. But in any climate with cool spring temperatures, the no water rule until emergence is absolute. Number 3. Pinch the first growing tip out completely. It feels like destruction and it doubles your flowers. When your dahlia sends up its first central shoot and it reaches about a foot tall with 3 sets of leaves, every instinct tells you to leave it alone and let it grow. It's your first sign of life. It's precious. Removing any part of it feels counterproductive. Pinch it out anyway. Remove the entire growing tip, the top 2 sets of leaves and the central bud, right back to the 3rd set of leaves down. Do this once, firmly, with clean snips or your fingers. Here is why this works. A dahlia left to grow its single central stem puts all its energy into one main shoot that produces one main flower. That flower is often large and impressive, but it's singular, and once it's done the plant slows significantly. When you remove that central tip, the plant responds by pushing 2 new stems from the leaf nodes just below your cut. Each of those stems then branches again. Within 4 to 6 weeks you have a plant with 4 to 8 flowering stems instead of 1, and those stems produce a continuous succession of blooms rather than one flush. The gardener's growing dahlias that flower from midsummer to frost are almost all pinching. The gardeners getting 1 impressive flower per plant in July and then watching the plant decline are almost all skipping this step because it feels wrong. Timing precision matters. Pinch at 3 sets of leaves, approximately 12 inches of height. Too early and you're removing a shoot the plant hasn't invested enough energy into yet. Too late and you've already allowed the plant to commit its structure in a way that doesn't respond as dramatically to the pinch. Number 4. That dead-looking tuber in spring is almost certainly alive. Here's how to tell. This is the one. This is the secret that explains why thousands of perfectly viable dahlia tubers get thrown in the compost every spring by gardeners who gave up too early. You dig out your stored tubers in March or April. They look terrible. They're shriveled. They might be slightly soft. Some have gone wrinkled and leathery. A few might have mold on the outside. And you assume they're dead, because they look dead, so you throw them away and spend money on new ones. Most of them were alive. Here is the diagnostic test. Take the tuber in question and look at the neck, the narrow section where it connected to the main stem. Specifically look for eyes, which appear as small pinkish or cream-colored bumps or slight swellings at the neck junction. If you can see even one eye, that tuber is alive and capable of producing a full plant. The body of the tuber can be shriveled, wrinkled, or slightly soft and the plant will still grow normally once it's in warm soil. The only clear signs of actual death: the neck is completely rotted through, soft, brown, and mushy all the way to the center with no firm tissue remaining. Or the entire tuber has collapsed into a wet, formless mass with no structural integrity. Short of those 2 conditions, the tuber is alive. 4 tubers that look borderline, shriveled but with intact necks and visible eyes, rehydrate them before planting. Soak the entire tuber in room temperature water for 1 to 2 hours, then plant immediately. The rehydration firms up the tissue enough to give the eyes a better start. This single piece of knowledge will save you money every spring for the rest of your gardening life. Number 5. How you store the tubers in autumn decides whether you have dahlias next year. Everything else on this list determines how well your dahlias grow this season. This secret determines whether you have dahlias at all next season, and it's where most of the year's work either pays off or gets undone in a single bad decision. The wrong assumption: dig the tubers, brush off the soil, put them in a box in the garage, done. This approach produces the shriveled, rotted mess you found last spring. Tubers fail in storage for 2 specific reasons. They rot from too much moisture. If any soil or damaged tissue remains on the tuber, it creates a site for fungal growth that spreads through the whole clump over winter. Or they desiccate from too little moisture. Stored in air that's too dry, tubers shrivel past the point of viability. The correct process: after the first frost blackens the foliage, cut the stems back to 6 inches and leave the tubers in the ground for 2 weeks. This curing period allows the skin of the tuber to thicken slightly, which dramatically improves storage survival. Then dig carefully, a fork, not a spade, working from outside the clump inward to avoid slicing tubers. Shake off loose soil but do not wash. Washing introduces moisture that causes rot. Let the tubers dry in open air for 24 hours in a frost-free space. Then dust the entire clump lightly with sulfur powder, available at any garden center, which prevents fungal growth during storage without drying the tubers out. Store in barely damp vermiculite, peat moss, or cocoa coir in a cardboard box or wooden crate. The medium should feel barely moist when squeezed, not wet, not bone dry. Keep storage temperature between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. A basement, garage that doesn't freeze, or cool closet works. Check once a month. If any tuber shows rot, remove it immediately before it spreads to the rest of the clump. In zones 8 and warmer, the Gulf Coast, Southern California, mild UK regions, dahlias can often overwinter in the ground with a thick mulch layer of 6 to 8 inches applied after the first frost. The tubers go dormant but don't freeze. This eliminates the storage process entirely, which eliminates most of the failure risk. If you're in a mild climate and still digging your tubers every year out of habit, stop. Leave them in the ground and save yourself the work. These 5 secrets aren't 5 separate tips. They are one strategy built around a single truth. Dahlias don't die because they're difficult. They die because the critical moments, planting orientation, the watering decision before emergence, the pinch that doubles your flowers, the diagnostic test that tells you what's actually dead and what isn't, and the storage process that determines whether you start fresh or start rich next spring, happen before most gardeners realize they matter. Plant the tuber horizontally with the neck pointing toward your support. Don't water until you see the shoot. Pinch at 12 inches and double your blooms. Check the neck before you throw any tuber away. And store in barely damp medium at 40 to 50 degrees with sulfur dust protecting the clump. Do those 5 things and the dahlias that have been disappointing you are the same tubers that will fill your garden next summer and the summer after that. Subscribe, because this channel exists for exactly this. Plants that everyone makes harder than they need to be. New video every 2 days. And tell me in the comments, have you ever thrown away tubers in spring that you now think might have been alive? Or do you have a storage method that's worked for years that other gardeners should know about? Drop it below. I read every single one.